comes to your mind when you first hear the word guitar or guitarra? Some teenagers would say it's their crush in school. For some music lovers that are into classic rock and blues may say Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, or Bob Marley, or the Eagles, Bon Jovi. Some young Filipino would scream, River Maya! E-Heads, Eraserheads, or Metallica, Green Day. Wow, my MTV days. Well, but for our more mature Filipino friends, they may say it's Florante Aguilarar, I bet, Pepe Smith, or Ruben Tagalog. And of course, Harana. Were you able to witness that era? Well, I did. I experienced being serenaded in a joking way. It was not a serious Harana courtship. For my foreign viewers who just stepped into this vlog, you may be wondering, what's Harana? Well, it's actually the English word for serenade. But our Filipino version is a very distinct style and execution. I think it's my generation, the 70s babies, who experienced provincial life, is the last generation that last heard about someone being wooed by serenades or harana. I'll tell you, even when the guy isn't that physically good looking, when he sings in tune and plays the guitar while you're looking at the window or porch, that guy singing for you will suddenly appear attractive. Music has been an important element and a symbolic form of courtship in the ancient pre-colonial times until before the 70s. Proof of this is seen in pop culture displayed in the film industry. Remember the LVN and Sampaguita Pictures film productions? My point is, music has always been an expected norm in courtship throughout generations, only that it has evolved in its form and approach. We may backtrack further than the Spanish colonial period. Music or singing or music playing has primarily been a vital social and spiritual ceremonial element in Filipino traditional practices during the pre-colonial times. It was evident in the folklore customs of the indigenous people in the Philippines through the oral traditions. Oral tradition is an ancient indigenous Filipino activity of reciting folklore or traditional stories of myth, heroic deeds, and history in a two-note manner or sing-sang manner. It's similar to the Japanese oral tradition, only that the form is different. For my young viewers or Gen Z out there, you may find an example of this at the episode 1085 of the anime One Piece. Folklorists, or the one passing on the storytelling to the audience in the ancient pre-colonial times in the Philippines, were not necessarily accompanied by a musician or a musical instrument. According to one friend who is an art studies professor and a researcher, some folklorists would pass on the story to the young ones while doing the laundry or chopping some vegetables. That's the oral tradition. This custom was the practical and easiest approach since pen and paper was not yet abundant in the country, despite the trade relations with China and some Muslim nations. Although there were written manuscripts on bamboo, yet not everyone could read. But if oral tradition was done in a formal setting, it was usually accompanied by traditional instruments and a customary religious rite. The point of mentioning this is the focus on music or singing as a vital role in passing on knowledge and on social activities of the early indigenous Filipinos. I know my vlog may sound academic and boring, but please stay with me. Let me continue. Music has played a crucial role not only in the mundane activities of the early Filipinos, but also in crucial stages of a young indigenous life, from birth to marriage. And one of those is in courtship. This is not only limited to singing or music playing, but also by utilizing dance. Our indigenous fellow Filipinos in the Cordillera region, among the traditional families, are known to utilize dance courtship. and these have various forms and names depending on the language group or tribe. You may check the citation below. The Philippines has assimilated multicultural influences from the Chinese, Indo-Malay, Arabian, and Hindu cultures through migration and trade relations. Therefore, the indigenous Filipinos were already exposed to ancient instruments before the Spanish came. We have some string instruments from which guitar is a part of in terms of musical instrument category. One example of this is the Kudyapi, which is a 2-stringed 4 feet to 6 feet long wooden instrument. The Kudyapi is a lute actually, with 8 frets and 2 strings. One is used for making the melody, and one is for the drone. The instrument predominates in the northern groups in Mindanao, the Subanun, Magindanaoan, Meranao, and also in Palawan. I'll make a series on Philippines indigenous instruments and music next year. So, it's safe to say that traditionally, the ancient Maharlikan or ancient Filipino was not ignorant at all to string instruments. Thus, they easily assimilated the guitar as a musical instrument. In a modern sense, one may say that music is both a spiritual thing and lifestyle in the Philippines during the pre-colonial times, and until now, that's evident in Christian churches and social gatherings. The first type of guitar that was brought by the conquistador Spaniards who came during the Baroque period in the Philippines was also a prototype of the modern acoustic guitar that we have now. In fact, the guitar or guitarra is also foreign influence in Spain. It was brought during the Islamic conquest in Europe by the intellectuals from the Middle East. The early string instruments from which the classical guitar evolved from actually goes way back in ancient Greece. The string instrument was known as Guitarra, and so that's where we got the name guitar. Well, actually, according to my research, it goes way back to ancient Mesopotamia, which is now modern Iraq. Please allow me to read this direct quotation from the article by the online.berkeley.edu. Quote, "In fact, the earliest ancestor of the modern classical guitar is thought to be the ancient lute from Mesopotamia. According to a book by musicologist Richard J. Tumbrell, the first lute appears in archaeological findings around 3300s to 3100s BCE on a cylinder seal figure in Mesopotamia, and later in a Hittite stone carving in Anatolia." Unquote. I'd like to add another information about the classical guitar's great-grandparent, which is the oud. Direct quotation again. Quote, "The oud is a short-necked, half-pear-shaped lute with 11 strings that are grouped in twos, with a single bass string, in a sign of quite how deep its history in the region is. Experts believe the instrument's origins lie in the ancient Egyptian instrument nefer, a long-necked and small-bodied resembling the Western lute." Unquote. And so that's how classical guitar history goes. Brought from Asia to Europe and back to Asia. Only that it has evolved into what we call now the Spanish guitar or classical guitar, along with its cousins, the bandurria, an instrument similar to the Spanish mandolin. Wow, I feel like going back to the College of Music days actually, in my orchestra and music history classroom. Right, I took formal studies in classical music in the late 1990s. Alright, some of you may be already impatiently waiting. When will I circumnavigate to the topic on Harana?